looking like preach.
Yo, what is going on, YouTube family? I hope you are well. Have you ever noticed that when you travel to a different country, different part of the world, you feel like a totally different person? You feel more confident, you feel more free, you feel more open. There's a reason for this. How can we use this and learn from this so we can feel the same way, same social confidence back home in our own town? Let's explore how we can do this. For a little bit of context and a little bit about me, I've been a touring musician for over 8 years now, traveled the world, and traveling in and of itself is somewhat of a hobby for me. So I do a lot of that, see friends all around the world pretty regularly. And from that, I've noticed that I'm so different in terms of my energy and how I carry myself, how people respond to me the moment I leave this country. I'm in England right now, for those who don't know. And I just realized that people would respond to me in a much better way. I would feel more free, more open the moment I step foot outside of this country. And why is that? Essentially, when you're outside of your usual environment, your usual routines, your brain isn't as attached and isn't as clung on to its usual patterns. It's not as attached to self-perceptions in the same way, the old perceptions of yourself when you're in your hometown. So it gives you this feeling of freedom, this feeling of openness. And that's that extra confidence that you get when you feel different in, a more foreign environment, especially when you're traveling further afield. You're meeting new people, you are eating new foods, you don't know anyone, right? There's less of that feeling of judgment because you don't know anyone there. And that's essentially what's happening. Yeah, the stakes feel lower and you feel more free to express yourself. You feel more open, you feel less judged. Socially, you try new things. So the real key to this is how can we take what we learn and what we experience and how we respond to this new environment when we travel and actually take that and replicate that back home. Because the truth is that openness, that more social freedom that we have when we're abroad, that opens doors, starts new relationships, can start new businesses. You can meet your significant other much easier. There's much more opportunity for that when you feel more open and more free. How can we actually replicate this behavior back home to improve our lives in general? Because the truth is most people don't travel the world every week. They don't travel the world every month even. So we spend most of our lives in our hometown. So how can we be our most open and most confident selves back home from learning about how we feel when we're abroad, okay? So the first way that I would do this, and I have done this in my own life, is what I'm calling lowering the stakes. So when we're abroad, when we're traveling, we generally feel like there's much lower stakes because no one knows us. Our reputation isn't at risk. We feel a lot more free to take risks socially or drink more alcohol, or, some people might do drugs a lot, when they travel, because there's not as much of that judgment in a new environment. And generally it feels more exciting because it's more novel. How can we, and I'm not saying when we're home we should take drugs, but what I am saying is how can we learn from this feeling, this energy that we have when we're abroad, and apply it back home? So we're going to be lowering the stakes. So what I say is we try to act more like a visitor in your own town. So in my case, I live in London. So when I come back from a big travel, I try to keep that mindset and keep that openness of being a visitor, being a tourist even in my own city, and embody that energy. So it's something that's conscious on my mind every day. What does this practically look like? This could literally mean the moment I step out the house, in my head, I'm saying to myself, I'm a tourist in my own city. What can I experience? What can I see? Where can I go that I haven't been before? And how can I embody that energy and interact with new people in a way that makes me feel free and makes me feel like I am creating new experiences, much like I would if I was abroad, yeah? So it's about having that mentality of being open to meeting new people, being more social. And we're going to talk about in a second exactly how we can be more social in general and the difficulties that come with that sometimes and how we can overcome them. That's a big part of this whole thing. Because I think a lot of the time when we are in our hometown, we just feel a lot more closed off socially. And there's many reasons for this. You know, a lot of the time, if we're at home, we're focused on work. We're in a much more logical state of mind, which isn't a very social state of mind. We're much more logical. We're much more focused on work, money, optimizing for sleep, for having, you know, the most energy for the next day. So we're going to bed early, these sort of things. So it's about how we can embody that energy whilst also, you know, living in our hometown in a way that's not going out and getting drunk every weekend, or every weekday for that matter. So going to new areas maybe you've never been to in your city. Obviously, it's a lot harder if you live in a smaller city. But in a city like London, there's so many places to visit. It would take years to see everywhere. So that's one good example. Go to new areas. Search for opportunities to meet new people more than you normally would. So whether this be events you've never been to before, networking events, business events, just general social events. Spend more time with friends outside of the usual places that you would normally go to. So don't just go to the pub down the road like you do every Friday, every Saturday. Go somewhere new. All in all, just acting like a visitor, acting more like a tourist in your place that you live, in your hometown. Similarly to what I call lowering the stakes, the second thing I would suggest is lowering the barrier to entry socially. So what this actually means and looks like, I'll give an example. A few years ago, I went to Budapest with a friend of mine he'd recently gone through a breakup. He was feeling very closed off, very almost like in a shell. He didn't want to speak to people. He wasn't in a social mood. And we were out in a club and a bar and he wanted to become more social. And I said to him, listen, you're thinking about, you know, there was a lot of girls. He was thinking about speaking to the hottest girl and he didn't know how to do that. And I was like, listen, you're thinking about level 10. Speaking to an attractive girl that you want to speak to, speaking to an attractive girl is a hard thing to do for most men, most people, in a romantic, intentful context. So lower the barrier. First, just get in a social mood by maybe speaking to the bar staff, maybe asking for a drink and then saying, how was your day? Or maybe speaking to a random dude a random guy that's just walking, and giving him a compliment, just saying, I like your shoes. First, lower the barrier, get social, and then do this over and over again and work your way up socially. And then he did this within 15, 20 minutes. He was speaking to a group of people. Within half an hour, he was speaking to a girl. Within an hour, him and that girl were kissing. So it's just about warming up and getting more social, but starting from the ground up. Why does this actually work? So essentially, what you're doing is building these small social wins. This is a process called behavioral momentum. You're reinforcing these positive experiences and these positive feelings in your system, in your mind, in your energy, that allows you to build momentum and build up socially. So you're essentially starting with low stakes, low barrier to entry, and you're building up, and then you can get yourself to a point where you're comfortable with more higher stakes social environments, whether that be a group of women or in his case, a group of women or one woman. You're now social enough, you've built that momentum, you've got that fluidity now to feel comfortable in that scenario. You're not shaky, your voice isn't shaking, you're not shaking, you're standing up straight, you're confident because you built up that momentum from the bottom. Essentially what's going on in the brain is you're giving your brain like a small hit of dopamine every time you get a successful interaction, right? It's like a reward. And so starting from the bottom, which is the easiest social thing to do, generally you're going to have positive responses. So you're giving your brain a hit of dopamine and you start to work your way up from there, right? The opposite to this is facing a rejection. And that's a whole other video, which I'll go into more depth about. But just to touch on it briefly, we are essentially afraid of social rejection, which stops us from being social in the first place, right? Because back in the caveman days, essentially rejection would mean death, whether it be death from another tribe, a foreign tribe, or death from an animal, the fight or flight response kicks in and we die. We essentially are the same beings. We have the same wiring in our system, and we fear rejection in any scenario because it triggers that same process in our brains. It's in the amygdala, part of the brain that triggers this response. All that boring stuff we'll talk about in another video, but essentially that's why we're afraid of rejection. And we need to basically just rewire this process in real time and teach ourselves that we're not going to die if we speak to a random guy or if we speak to a group of people. It's just a case of doing it and building up that momentum and building up that confidence in the moment. The third concept that will really help us replicate this energy of being abroad when we're back home is identity flexibility. So this is a really deep topic, and it talks about exactly who we feel and who we think we are and who we become. So essentially, when you're abroad, when you're traveling, you really have this flexibility, this fluidity in your identity for the same reasons I talked about before. We have less risk. We feel less judged because not many people know us or no one knows us. So we're not locked into our usual identity. So we can play with this. When we're back home, right, we can ask ourselves, who would we be? Who would I be if no one knew who I was, right? And then you can start to really lock and drill in that identity of who, the world is my oyster. Who would I be if no one knew who I was? And really start to embody those characteristics, those traits, those behaviors, embody that energy in everyday life. And the fourth is essentially just leaning into novelty. So like I touched on before, try new things, try new events, meet new people, search for opportunities to actually meet new people. In another video, I'll go on to talk about exactly how we can make this process easier. But essentially, we're going to be looking for opportunities to become more social, really flex that muscle and practice to open up a whole world of opportunity for ourselves, new friendships, new relationships, new business opportunities, new hobbies, right? Break that routine, the habits that we have, and this will naturally boost social openness for ourselves. So I hope this video has helped in some way. Don't forget, if you like the content that you're seeing so far, like, subscribe, so you can keep in touch with me and exactly what I'm posting when I'm posting. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well. That's Quantz.Diary. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.